It seems that lots of people have been baking recently, and sourdough seems to be the recipe of choice. I don't think it's because bakeries are closed, but most probably because you actually have the time nowadays to feed and maintain a starter and then cook your bread, which is like an 8-day process. I've recently done it and I can safely say that I will not do it again. So what's the next best thing we can do that messes around with fermentation? Well, what do you spread on bread? Butter, cheese, and labneh. Here are 3 fun recipes you can do at home if you have a lot of dairy available. Let's start with my first one, beautifully homemade butter. It's much easier than you think, but it sounds so impressive when someone invites you over and says, hey, you know, I made my own butter and flavored it with Maldon sea salt and some unicorn tears. All you have to do is grab 4 cups of heavy cream, place that in a jar, and mix it aggressively with 1/2 cup of yogurt. These are the brands I use in Australia, and it worked quite well. Just try and find a cream that doesn't have any thickeners and a natural yogurt that is full of probiotics with no added, well, anything. So what we're making here is cultured butter, basically adding live bacteria to the cream versus regular butter, which would just be churned cream. I feel like the result has a deeper, rich flavor and is fattier. Cover this with a kitchen towel. It really needs to breathe at room temperature, and try to find some sort of string or elastic band to put around it. This will ferment slightly over the course of 24 to 36 hours. After that amount of time, you'll get a creamy, tangy mix that's ready to go. Place this in the fridge for about 2 hours. We really want to bring down the temperature of the mix to around 15 degrees. Then you're going to put all of this in a mixer. I'm using a really vintage one, and then whisk away until you start seeing separation between the butter and the buttermilk. You should have clumps that start gravitating and sticking together to the whisk. This happens really quickly, so make sure you keep an eye on it. The last thing you want is for the whole mix to get too warm and then dissolve once more, and then you will not be able to recover the butter from the buttermilk. All you have to do now is place some muslin on a sieve and strain out the buttermilk. Congratulations, you've just made buttermilk. Don't throw that away. You can use that for another recipe. I like to squeeze out as much as I can. Then in a new bowl, I start pressing down on my butterball to extract even more milk. I use a wooden spatula for this. Another thing you can do is basically massage the ball. Yes, I said that. In some very cold ice water to basically press out as much buttermilk as possible. You're gonna keep doing this and re-adding fresh water until that ice cold water stays more or less clear. Take it out, pat it dry, and then with cold hands, knead it a few times more to extend its shelf life. Once achieved, this is where you can really start adding some flavor. I personally just like adding some flake salt. That way I can keep this in the fridge for about a month. You can add anything like garlic and herbs. I'm just not sure how quickly that will go off. Then you can shape it any way you want. I watched probably way too many videos about the beurre de Bordier in France that's so popular, and they kind of like tap it with a wooden spatula, and that looked extremely therapeutic to me. So I just started doing that. This was so good, the perfect balance of just like a creamy, fatty texture, slight tanginess, and then those big bites of flake salt all over. Perfect on some sourdough bread or even some mashed potatoes. Next, we have a very simple white cheese, or queso blanco, or queso poté in the Philippines, but obviously since we don't have carabao milk, it's not queso poté, but white cheese is traditionally done all over the world, and it's actually really easy. It goes by many names, from fresh cheese to farmer's cheese, simply because it's the fastest way to, well, make cheese. Get a double boiler ready, add in your full cream milk. It's okay if it's pasteurized, just don't use the ultra pasteurized stuff. Bring the milk slowly to about 80 degrees. Take it off the fire and then mix in some white vinegar. Immediately, you will see some curds form. Let that sit and cool for about 20 minutes. Again, here you can add different types of flavors and aromatics if you want. I'm keeping it nice and clean. I put all of this in a muslin cloth on top of a sieve and either squeeze out the remaining liquid or let it strain slowly until you have the desired texture that you want. If it gets too dry, you can always add back a little bit more of liquid and mix that in together. Again, don't throw this liquid out. It could be used to marinate chicken or meats before frying them or cooking them. You can then form this however you want. I like to place it still in the muslin cloth between two plates and then just pressing down until I get a nice shape before frying it in some hot olive oil.
It's everything you want it to be.
Next, we have Labneh. So if you take yogurt and strain it, that becomes Greek yogurt. If you strain it even further, it usually becomes Labneh. So think of cream cheese with a slight tangy flavor. So yes, it's still yogurt, but it's closer to cheese in my opinion.
I saved the easiest for last. All you have to do is take about 900 grams of whole yogurt and mix it with a teaspoon of salt. That goes into some muslin cloth or several layers of cheesecloth, but as you've seen in the previous recipes, I like using muslin cloth because it's much cheaper and cheesecloth is really expensive and not as reusable. All of that is placed on a sieve on top of a bowl. Wrap things out nicely and you can even put some weight on it. I put a can there to just help draw out the liquid that's found in the yogurt. Up to you really how long you want to leave this in the fridge. I usually leave it for a day or two. I personally like 2 days because it really gives you a thick, spreadable consistency. This can then be shaped and served like cheese or spread on a plate with lots of different aromatics like sea salt, extra virgin olive oil, some spices like za'atar or dukkha, and any herbs that you may have handy.
So texturally, this is very similar to a cream cheese, just slightly tangier, not as funky as like a chèvre or a goat cheese, but really cool that you can make something like this just in your house using some yogurt and just straining basically. And if you tell people you made this at home, I think they'll be very impressed. It's so tasty though, that's why it makes a lot of sense to put so many different toppings on it, because you can really play around with it. There's a French cheese I'm sure a lot of you know called boursin, where they add like herbs and garlic and salt and pepper and stuff. This is a type of kind of like cheese you can riff off of with ingredients like that.